Okay, and welcome to the open economy. Today we'll be doing exports and imports, and it is under the assumption that there is zero capital mobility. Now, what is this zero capital mobility thing that I'm talking about? Now, you see, when there's international activity going around, okay, when international relationships, what countries can do with one another is that they can buy and sell goods and services from one another. They can also, invest in bonds and any financial assets from other countries. That's what they can do as well. But that's going to complicate things, when we start at this level. So we're going to assume that countries do not invest, by pouring their money in to buy foreign bonds or any foreign investment vehicles. We're just going to assume that there's normal trade, buy and sell of goods and services. Okay, so now that's exports and imports, and we're gonna start by using a little example so that we can illustrate what are exports and imports better. Alright, so I'm gonna refer Singapore as the domestic currency and Malaysia as the foreign currency. Foreign economy. Okay, so when domestically, Singapore exports when we sell goods and services over to Malaysia. Okay, we sell stuff over to Malaysia, or we perform certain services for them. Okay, basically, whenever we receive money, as in Singapore, anytime Singapore receives money from Malaysia, because of goods and services trade, that is exports. Okay, even when Malaysians come to Singapore and they spend it on the food and a hotel stay, or they buy a car or anything, when they buy from Singapore, we are actually exporting as well because we are receiving money from them. So as you can see, trade doesn't have to happen at the borders. It can happen in the country itself, and that's exports also. Alright, now talking about imports, when we buy things, on the international market, when we buy stuff from Malaysia, chewing gum, water, cars, or whatever, that's importing. And when we go to Malaysia and we enjoy ourselves there, by going for a holiday, and we spend on tourism there, we are actually importing as well because money is flowing out of our country, into Malaysia. So now that's exports and imports, a clearer picture that's been painted for you. Okay. I'm going to go through the concept of net exports, which is actually my total exports less my total imports. That is my net exports. And theoretically, at equilibrium, net exports should equal zero. But in reality, this doesn't happen. Sometimes we buy more than we sell, and we sell more than we buy. But this is what the economy is moving towards. Towards a zero net export condition. So what determines trade? What determines whether we buy stuff from Malaysia or whether we want to sell stuff, whether do they want to buy our stuff? So what determines trade is, number one, the exchange rate, the nominal exchange rate. So basically the nominal exchange rate is how much SGD is going to be traded for how much Malaysian ringgit. So there are two ways that we can actually quote exchange rate. We can either quote it in terms of the price for one domestic currency. That means how much ringgit do I have to pay in order to get one Singapore dollar. That is the first way. And the second way is in terms of the price of one foreign currency. How much Singapore dollar do I have to exchange to get one Malaysian ringgit? Now, in your subject guide, written by Amos Wisdom, they actually uses this format, this quote, to determine the exchange rate. It doesn't matter which one you use, but for my video, I'm going to be using the price of domestic currency, the first way, and I'm going to show you why I use this, because it's actually more straightforward. Now, see, I've got the demand and supply curve for my Singapore dollar. So what happens here is that on the y-axis, I have the price of the domestic currency, which is the Singapore dollar, and I've on the x-axis the quantity of Singapore dollar, in the world. Alright, and initially I've got this demand for my Sing dollar over here, downward sloping line, and I've got the supply of Singapore dollar over here. That's the supply, and the initial equilibrium has brought the exchange rate to 2 ringgit per 1 Singapore dollar. So I need to exchange. Where I've got 1 Singapore dollar, I can use that to buy 2 ringgits. Alright, so now when we move up the y-axis, okay, the Singapore dollar appreciates. That means it becomes stronger. You can buy more Malaysian ringgit. The price of my currency has increased because Malaysians will need to exchange more ringgit with me just to get $1. Okay, if we go down, alright, we are depreciating the SGD. So now, for example, maybe Singapore has found a way to build a car that can fly. Okay, so once Singapore has built this car that can fly and we are the sole producer of it, people want to buy this car. Okay, so what they got to do before they buy this car is they got to exchange their currency, which in our case is the Malaysian ringgit, into Singapore dollar. Alright, so when they change the ringgit into Singapore dollar, they got to come to our money changer and they got to change that, and they demand for Singapore dollar. And that is why the demand curve is going to shift to the right side. And that is where this purple line appears, D prime. So that is my new demand curve, and the equilibrium has brought me to 3 ringgit. So now, as you can see, my Singapore dollar has appreciated, and I need to use 3 ringgit to exchange for 1 Singapore dollar. Alright, so now is it all the time good that, you know, my currency keeps appreciating? Well, it may be good and it may be bad. You know, if my currency keeps appreciating, which means I can exchange for more ringgit, that means I can buy more of Malaysian stuff. With $1, I can buy more because it gives me more ringgit. But with that said, my stuff, okay, Singapore's stuff is going to be more expensive to Malaysians, because Malaysians are going to have to use more ringgit just to change for $1, such that they can buy just $1 worth of our stuff. So my exports may drop. Okay, so that is the scenario that's happening. It's not necessarily good that currency appreciates and depreciates. Alright? Okay, so what are the other factors of trade? Okay, number 1, it is the domestic price level, my price level, the price level of Singapore. Okay, if my stuff going to become more expensive, you know, Malaysians won't want to buy them. Okay, and likewise, if Malaysians' price is going to be higher, then Singaporeans won't want to buy them. Okay, so they look at the differences. They look at how prices move up or down. Okay, so we have our nominal exchange rate, we have our domestic price level P, and we have P star, which is our foreign price level. So we combine these 3 together and we get the real exchange rate, okay, which is denoted by a small letter E. And this is the formula that shows real exchange rate. The nominal exchange rate multiplied by the foreign price level divided by the domestic price level. So now that is the real exchange rate. Okay, so what affects exports and imports specifically? Exports are affected by the exchange rate, okay, the real exchange rate, like we have discussed just now, okay, and it is also affected by the income of the foreign country, because if the foreign country is richer, they will want to buy more stuff from us. Okay, for the A component, okay, you know, we gotta calculate our aggregate expenditure, okay, and that is gonna be X, okay, exports equals to X naught multiplied by the real exchange rate. Now, why do we multiply the amount of exports by the real exchange rate? Because we want to convert, okay, the total number of exports into our local currency. So this is an exchange rate. Okay, so that what we do is we take our total number of exports, okay, we multiply by the real exchange rate, and we will get our real I want to use the word real, we will get our actual amount of exports in SGD, okay, Singapore dollar. Now, our imports are affected by the real exchange rate as well as our income. The more money we have, okay, the more we will import. And this is the AE component for imports. Okay, so now that we are experts on what are the AE components, and we are also experts on how to find the equilibrium income, and we are also experts on how to find a multiplier, and as well as the IS curve, we are going to talk about the AE equation right now. Okay, so in order to find income, I need to take my consumption and add that with my investment, government spending, exports, and I'm going to less imports, because when I import, money is flowing out of the economy, so it is not income to me. Alright? So assuming that I am in an open economy with a government that imposes lump sum taxes, alright, at equilibrium, my aggregate expenditure is going to be equal to my income, and it's going to be my C components plus my I components plus my G component plus my X component and minus my imports components. Alright, so I'm going to expand the brackets out, and I'm going to move all the Y components to the right side of the equation, and I'm going to isolate them to the left. And this chunk over here is going to be my autonomous expenditure, and I'm going to represent that by A bar. Next, I'm going to factorize Y, and I'm going to bring this to the other side, and I have this. So this is my multiplier. Alright, so if you compare this over here, this multiplier with this multiplier, which is for a closed economy, you will see that this multiplier is actually a smaller one, because there is a positive addition of M1, which makes this bottom part, the denominator, a bigger number. So 1 divided by a bigger number gives you a smaller number, and that is why for an open economy the multiplier is smaller. And with a smaller multiplier, that also makes my IS curve steeper. Okay, now assuming that I have already expanded the brackets out, okay, for my AE equation, and I'm going to isolate interest rates on the left side. Okay, so now I've got interest rates on the left side, and this entire chunk over here becomes my my autonomous expenditure. Okay, what I do is I'm just going to bring I1 to the bottom, and this is what I have, my equation for the IS curve. And this in the bracket over here is the slope of my IS curve in an open economy, and I'm going to compare that with the slope of an IS curve in a closed economy, and I'm going to realize that this figure is going to be bigger than this figure because of the addition of M1 to the numerator. Okay, and I have my new IS curve, which looks like this. It's going to be steeper as compared to an IS curve of a closed economy, and the extra factor that I'm going to put into the brackets is my real exchange rate. Okay, now the reason why the real exchange rate is going to affect the IS curve, because it affects trade. Okay, and once it affects trade, it affects our income, and that's why it is a factor. Alright, now I'm going to show you how we're going to derive this thing called the net exports line. Okay, and as you can see, I've added E, small letter e, to my IS curve because that's what affects it. So I'm going to show you what the Annex curve is going to look like in my AE model. Okay, it's going to look like this. It's going to be a downward sloping line. Okay, and I'm going to label this as NX not NX is 0, and it's affected by the real exchange rate. Okay, and it cuts just nice at this point. Why not? Okay, this is because I'm assuming that this is already the equilibrium, the initial equilibrium, and there's already a trade balance whereby the net exports equals to 0. When NX equals to 0, we are at a trade balance. Okay, so the trade is balanced. Alright, now why is it a downward sloping line, and why is it you will notice that on the left side of the 0 mark, okay, we are on a positive region of AE, positive, and on the right side we are negative. Okay, now the reason for this is simple. When we have got less income, okay, when we are not at this point, we are on the left side, we have less income, we do not import. Okay, we import lesser, and once we import lesser, that means my net exports is going to be positive. Why? Because X minus IM. If IM is lower, NX is exports remain the same, so this is positive, right? So that's why we have a positive portion over here, and over here is going to be negative. It's going to be on the negative portion of AE, because when we earn more, okay, on the right side over here, what happens is that we import more, exports remaining the same. That's why NX is negative. Okay, and that's negative for you. And at this point, okay, where at this income level at Y0, NX is equal to 0. Okay, now with everything constant, okay, with exchange rate unchanged, price level unchanged, everything unchanged at Y0, that is where NX equals to 0, and that's where the economy will want to be, and that's why we have a vertical line over here which is called NX equals to 0. Okay, and I'm going to put not over there because sometimes it changes, and this is affected by my real exchange rate, and in certain cases my foreign income. That's if the question wants you to compare two economies together. But if the question just asks you to focus on the domestic economy, then you don't have to care about Y star. Okay, now how does this curve move? Okay, let's say something happens, okay, that makes our exports increase. Okay, so maybe let me see, yeah, the flying car thing comes into play. Okay, so yeah, we start to export more, so this guy is going to shift outwards. So this is you have to focus on this curve, this vertical curve, but we're using this to explain the movement of this, right? So now this is going to move, and let me show you how it's going to happen. Okay, this is going to shift up, right? And we have a new intersection over here with the y, with the so-called y-axis, the income axis, and we're going to have a new Annex line over here. This is Annex 1 equals to 0, which is affected by my real exchange rate. Okay, now the important points that you gotta take note for this video is what is real exchange rate, okay, what exports imports, multiplier, IS curve, and this Annex line over here. Okay, you will learn more about the movement, okay, of this line in the next few videos. Okay, we will talk about monetary policy, we'll talk about fiscal policy, we'll talk about changes in trade, and after that we're going to be moving on to our capital account, where initially I tell you about the financial accounts. Okay, so now that is what we'll be going through in the near future. Okay, so I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and I hope that it was a good introduction to the open economy for you. It is a very interesting topic, because that's where we can actually start to predict what happens to exchange rate, okay, given certain policies that governments have implemented. Okay, so thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.